All right, I want to give you guys a little update on this what I just did here. I think it's pretty exciting. So I am attempting to document. Also, for me, documentation is a form of having clarity about what it is I'm doing for myself. So look, what I'm doing is I'm making instructions, and I send what I do is I send these instructions over to the agent. So I sent these instructions here, where I just tell it what I do here is I just tell it. I chunk the instructions. I like to keep it. I like to keep it understandable. I sent all these instructions to initialize the project, create dependencies, set up the project structure. I, I was very opinionated about the way I wanted the folders to be organized, which I had sent it previously. I sent it. I told it to create the products JSON. I told it to set up with 3 different kombucha styles, load the data, and I sent this as kind of some. These are just like the instructions, the first 2 steps. The first 2 steps to getting this milestone that has, I think, 5 steps. And I also sent with it. I sent it a little bit more context in terms of the theme in the form of this project overview, where it has all the information about the project. Actually, I didn't mean to send it this one. I sent it this one. I sent it this one by accident, but it still worked. I sent it also some basics so that it knows some basic things that I saw it struggling with. So I sent all these things to its contacts, and I told it to execute. And what it did was it created a ton of files, which I'll show you here. All these files that have anything with a U or an M next to them got created or modified. But it also gave me a and it ran perfectly. With no errors or anything, generated probably 500, 700 lines of code, and it also generated, I had it generate this log of what it did, just so each time I do it, I have it do a log, because then I read over it, and it helps me just make sure I don't miss anything, and I follow the logic. Created all these different directories. It created product data, created product JSON file, it created all the state handling, it created all the state handling, and it created some components. And just to show you a little bit about how much code that actually is, it may not sound like much. I mean, before I show you that, I will show you real quick. It created this, okay? But this may not look like much, but when you do this with a modern framework and you do all the things, there's actually a decent amount of code that gets generated. Just to speak briefly to that, to show you guys briefly how much code got generated, take a look here. Just briefly. Okay, so look, this is just the state handling. Every time it generates anything, it's going to do, it creates, state with the app name is loading. These are just general state things. It has all this error handling, getting ready for it is prepping for the future to know that we want to have spinners and all that, and this kind of sets the foundation for that. Then it creates state for just the product cart, kind of creating the infrastructure here. With the this is for the products, all the different items, all the different products. Okay, just kind of creating the logic so that we can get everything in the product from the products. It creates a state object here, a state module for the cart. How many items, total, count. I'm not going to go through this line by line. I did, but and it's immaculate code. But it set all this up, and then it also set up it set up code for let me see, what else did it do? It set up a little data code here, just set up all these little test accounts, okay, all this little test data. It set up a little server so I can play around with the test data without having to call the API just for the first milestone. It created all of the different templates. It created, here's the products list with the HTML, CSS, as well as all this stuff. It created all this stuff, which I went over in detail, but trying to go through it all will make this way too long. It went through a ton of code, and what's awesome is it completely adhered to when I told it I wanted it to comply to a very specific directory structure, which was very important to me because that's how I stay organized. And the entire code was completely, it stayed within the confines of what I had originally set out at the beginning of the project, where I told it the directory structure, I told it the components, I told it the milestones that I want to get to. I know this isn't ideal, and it stuck with it, and it built it, and it worked perfectly. And then I spent most of my time, honestly, just looking at the code that it had built. Because each code that it built, I went in and I chatted with it, because you can both generate code, but the other thing that's super, super interesting is, let's just say, okay, I had it, walk me through all the code and bring me up to speed on all this, because I hadn't seen it for a while. So after it generated it, what I had to do was just walk me through the code step by step and give me a tour of every single thing it had done and why. And if I needed a little background refresher, tell me why. So it's really interesting because it generates the code, and then it gives you a class on everything it did. I mean, I'm just blown away. Tell me if that's too much. Let me know. Take care.